on the old soapbox here with Austin Malleolo. We have a special guest, Dr. Sean with Active Life RX, and we're going to be chatting just a little bit about just some basic principles and really just based off a few concepts that we chatted a little bit about back and forth on an Instagram post a couple weeks back. But before I get any further, I want to let Dr. Sean introduce himself, give a little background on what he does, who he is, so you guys have some insight.
Austin, first of all, thanks for calling me special. Not a lot of people call me special on a daily basis. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So first of all, thanks for having me on. And what I'm looking to do, and I'm excited about doing with you today, is talk about how we can use multiple viewpoints to make CrossFit more approachable, better, and even potentially more efficacious for people who are doing it. And I come from a place, for those people who are listening to this who don't know anything about me, I come from a place of love, first and foremost. I believe from everything I've seen and everything I've been a part of, and I've been a personal trainer now for 15 years. I've owned a rehab clinic that I no longer own. I owned it for 9 years. I owned 3 CrossFit gyms, 2 of them for a terrible run. I was terrible at managing them. And one of them is still existing right now. And I exchanged it in part for my ability to do what I'm doing right now online. And I learned a lot of the best things to do and a lot of the worst things to do from my personal experience. And the best thing that I've seen to help people get from the couch to some semblance of an active and empowered lifestyle is CrossFit. I have not seen a better way for people to go from sedentary to relatively fit to extremely fit. Anything better than CrossFit. And at this point in my career, I own a company that essentially fills in the gap. So we fill in the gap for the people for whom CrossFit is potentially too invasive, too fast, and ends up finding them injured because of something that maybe their coach didn't know, because of something that maybe they didn't know about themselves, because of the things that they do in the gym to keep up with their friends that are inappropriate for their anatomy and their physiology. And we've been fortunate to help over 10,000 people worldwide to get out of pain without going to the doctor or missing their workouts. So they get to stay in the gym, get fit, and get out of pain at the same time. And in doing that, we've been also fortunate to have a bunch of coaches reach out to us when clients of theirs were dealing with modifications that weren't changing for 6 months, a year, 2 years. And then they would sign up with us to be a client, and the aches and pains and need to modify would go away. The coaches were like, hey, what are you guys doing over there that we're not doing over here? And how can I learn it? And so we started teaching coaches how to do what we do for our clients with their own clients, essentially creating our own competition. And then gyms started seeing that the coaches we were working with were doing great things by their clients and making a living as a professional CrossFit coach in a CrossFit gym. And they wanted to know how they could get their entire staff to do that. So it went from being a service that we offered to help people get out of pain to a service that we offered to really professionalize the entire fitness industry, starting with CrossFit, so that people who love it can do it for a living and retire from it one day.
Well, awesome. I mean, I don't know if anyone out there within our realm of fitness in profession doesn't want that, right? I think the professionalization of training and like you said, similar to me, but been in the field for about 15 years, and when we, I just remember going through college, and it was, the personal trainer route. I mean, that was really the route in which people would take. You go to school, and I went to school for exercise science, and that was sort of the deal. And I found CrossFit, and that sort of whisked me away for to where I am now. But absolutely, I think the affiliate model has been a unique conduit to really allowing people to start businesses, and like you said, whether struggle some and also overcome some of those struggles, and then really make an impact on a greater level than maybe for a lot of us that may have 12, 15 years ago. It's like, hey, personal training really might have been the only route. So I think that's pretty awesome, and again, sort of that exponential value of, if you train a coach and then those coaches can train others, there's some really cool return there. Because you can make way more effect when you train people that end up training people as opposed to just one person. So
for sure.
That stuff.
And Austin, you should know, man, I grew up in the CrossFit space watching you crush it at regionals. Like I was the guy driving from New York up to Canton, Massachusetts, when the Northeast regionals were still the Northeast regionals. And you had the unfair advantage of long arms and a short torso for deadlifts.
That's right. Yeah. And thankfully I still have long arms and a short torso. So I'm still relatively good at deadlifts. Not that, conducive for, say, Olympic lifting, but it really is good for pulling heavy weight off the floor. That's about really it.
Well, you managed to make it work.
That's right. I figure if you have something, you need to own it. If you certainly in the competitive world.
Yes.
But yeah, gosh, and I think as we kind of to the listeners out there, it's like, well, how did you and I end up on a podcast together? And I think I put up a post, which was the impetus behind it. And I'll just give some background on it. Was just basically, in my world, I for those, most of my listeners know, I work for seminar staff and do seminars almost every weekend, and with you often, you listen, you hear, you put your ear to the ground. And, oftentimes, certainly now that, as CrossFit has matured over the past, 10, 15 years, you tend to hear a lot of, one way is better than the other. Always do this, never do that. So it was just a simple post of, hey, sometimes, it's good to just kind of, take a step back, really remember what our goals are, and to get people fitter. And, I think that one of my favorite things that I live by and try to teach new coaches by, I wrote in here, is, limit your scope, master the fundamentals, and know what you don't know. And because oftentimes, that piece is missed. And then obviously kind of, if oftentimes people will say, hey, we should never be, teaching, say, a snatch or handstand walks or going heavy in a class, whatever it might be. And that sometimes for newer coaches, for me, kind of makes me a little sad, because I think back to when I started, and if I never had the opportunity to teach people those things, I don't know if I'd be where I am today. And then it was great from a content perspective, because now I think there's like 80 comments on my Instagram feed. I never get that. It was the most interactive feed. I know. I was like coaching and work, and I went back to my, to take a look at the Instagram. I was like, oh my Lord. I had to kind of go back and forth and, read through everyone's kind of, comments. And obviously I saw you in there kind of chatting up back and forth. And that's when I wanted to hop you on here, because obviously there was some good conversation that was happening back and forth. And I truly believe that, you and I have the same goal and the same belief. And I think that and that's why I wanted to hop on a podcast, because one, I'm the type of guy that if you text me, I say, give me a phone call. So I don't know if that makes me older or newer generation, but I'm a fan of speaking as opposed to typing, because I struggle with spelling. But, so I wanted to hop on this and just kind of, hear you out and chat a little bit. Because everything that you just said in your purpose and what you've done in the past 10 years, 15 years, I would say is almost identical to, what I do. And my purpose is to help people to get them better. Like you said, get them off the couch, get them moving and progress. And I haven't seen a program better than variance, functionality, intensity, known as CrossFit, to do that, and so, and I think that's something that, from your world, from a physical therapist and rehabilitation, prehab, things like that, I think oftentimes when a prescription comes down, or when someone of your clout says something, oftentimes younger individuals, people of that are easily influenced, will take that. And so I guess my charge, or my first thought starter is, hey, if we're going to say things like, we should never be teaching X movement in a class or whatever it might be, are there more qualifiers to that statement, or is it, is there a belief there that it's a Hammurabi's code? It's like, hey, we should never be teaching the snatch, handstand walk. Put whatever movement in there. I think it matters less from whatever movement, but for with the valid belief behind it. And I guess that's because that's what I think some of the conversation on the social media surround it.
Yeah. And I, like I said, I appreciate you giving me the chance to discuss all of that with you here. I mean, I think I got the opportunity to go back and forth with most of your friends in the Instagram feed.
Yeah.
And the post that you're talking about is exactly how we ended up on this call. And the post that preempted that, I think, although frankly I don't know, was that I made a post suggesting that we should stop snatching in group class. It was something along the lines of, I heard cocaine is a lot of fun, and so is snatching in group class, but we prefer you do neither. And it was
well, I didn't even see that post. But gosh, in all honesty, but I guess I was like, man, well, if you do them together, is it okay?
I don't know. I've never done the cocaine part. I have snatched in group class.
If you probably would PR. I mean, I would just,
maybe
no, know if the results. But okay, yeah. I mean, yeah, I actually didn't see that. Someone tagged or like over in response to the post, which I hadn't actually seen. So, but who would
Hey, well, look, it got us here, right?
So right, the paths crossed. So I like it.
So here's the thing. You said something really smart earlier that I want to make sure doesn't get glossed over. It's imperative upon us to learn what we don't know. If you said you need to know what you don't know, and you weren't talking about me, you were talking about the proverbial we. And, so what I have learned myself in the last, let's call it 5 years of maturing as an adult, because I have a long way to go, and I promise I've come a long way. I used to look for the argument. I used to look for all kinds of things to be inflammatory just to be inflammatory. And I would stand my ground because it was more important for me to be right than to progress. And that is no longer the case. So one of the things that I believe to be true, and maybe you do, maybe you don't, is that certain movements should require a higher level of acumen to teach. And that level of acumen to teach is imperative both upon the coach teaching it and dependent upon the person, athlete, student, whatever you want to call them, receiving it. Right? So what I'm saying here is, if you're going to teach a snatch in a group class environment, for example, the amount of attention that each individual in that class is going to need in order to reach basic competency is going to vary. And the ability of the coach providing that instruction is going to vary, thus further varying how long it takes somebody to gain basic skill. Would you agree with that?
Of course. Yep.
Okay. So here is my basic concern. I believe most CrossFit coaches have a barrier to entry that is too low to allow them to be consistently competent or even proficient at teaching the wide variety of members that they have the snatch. And by the way, I will put myself in that mix when I was a CrossFit coach. I don't think I understood clearly enough as a coach what it took to teach that well. And I feel bad for coaches out there who are in the boat that I was in, where I thought I was doing a phenomenal job. And the reality is I was frustrated because members of mine weren't progressing. They were still on the same hang power snatch that they were at months ago. They were still bouncing the bar away from their body. They were still avoiding coming to classes on days that a variety of different movements were scheduled. We're using the snatch, but it's really just a placeholder for any exercise you want.
Yeah.
And, I've since had the privilege of speaking to over 500 coaches in the last 2 years who didn't know that members of theirs were experiencing discomfort or even injury. And once they found out through the assessments that we teach them and through the conversations we ask them to have, it changed their entire world. And so all I'm looking to do is help coaches find that fulfillment, which is knowing I am doing the absolute best job I possibly can by all of my people. And I can explain to you how and why. And for me, scaling and modifying are the coach's way of saying the same thing that the doctor says when somebody has pain. Don't do it. If it hurts, don't do it. And if that's the best that we can do as coaches, then we're no better than the doctors who we seek to replace.
Let's start right there where you left off, where scaling and modifying. So essentially, I'm coaching a class, and I look for a pain-free range of motion, right? That's what I'm looking for. Now, if things are good, functional movements, natural, that are hitting the points performance, which are positions of orthopedic safety, mechanical advantage, and functionality, there shouldn't be pain, right? If you're squatting below parallel, your knees tracking your toes, blah, 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 blah. If there is, that's something that's not good. And for me as a coach, right, at some point, that's beyond my scope, right? It's if you're squatting, again, just use the squat as an example, and from a points of performance perspective, everything is right and there's pain. Now at this point, I need, in that moment, I need to modify or scale because to no pain. And my job as a coach is to not push them further to pain or anything like that, but also they want to get a workout in. You're right from the sense of if we allow that to be consistent, right? I would agree that we're no better for we're just going to scale you every day or modify, right? But the next step would be for me is to, if it's beyond my scope of knowledge, right? Knowing what I don't know. I'm not a physical therapist. I'm not an OT. I'm not whatever it might be. So that's where I now need to refer to someone that has that, where, hopefully we can start to get some understandings, right? Well, so I do think that I think we agree there, but I don't necessarily agree in the sense that, so scaling the goal is to get to the end state. So if someone walks in the gym and it's snatch day, right? And it's their first day. And at my gym, we don't do on-ramp. We let people come into any class because I know my coaches are good enough to handle that. Now, we're going to limit the risk, and from the sense of I'm just going to give them a PVC pipe for the day. And we're just going to learn some neurological stuff, where to put your body in space and what to do with it. It might just, and it might be very simple, right? And learning might be as fundamental as babies learn, right? Look at the person next to you and mimic that. It can be very simple there, with the risk of very low weight to no weight and challenging them a little bit, but highlighting small wins. And going back a little further into what you said is that, when members don't show up for certain days or things like that, I think we're saying the same thing. It's the coach's fault, right? Because I think about, I've been running Reebok CrossFit One for about 10 years. And of course, there are some people that don't like certain things, but I have a lot of 10-year members and the key is to show success and growth. It gets harder the longer we do something, right? Like your first 5 years compared to your back half of 5, you have PRs and, things happen a little slower, but we still should be showing growth. And so I do think we're saying the same thing. I don't necessarily think that scaling or modifying is it the best we can do? Well, it's necessary from a competency perspective. So if you don't have a pull-up, well, then we need to scale that to hopefully get you a pull-up at some point.
Sure.
So from a pain perspective, if you walk into the gym and there, something bothers you, it's like, well, I guess my question to you is do you believe that scaling out of pain it's not necessarily it is what we need to do, right? Because we shouldn't be hurting our athletes. But
so I think I know where you're going. Let me let you get there. I apologize. I shouldn't have interrupted.
No, yeah. So I guess my question is, it's when I go through that, and master the fundamentals, right? So we're just gonna use a PVC pipe. We're gonna air squat. We're gonna deadlift the PVC pipe. Know what you don't know. So if someone comes in with something that I don't know how to handle, then I'm like, man, I don't know how to handle that. So I'm gonna scale you to what I know how to do today. And then from there, the goal is to keep progressing, put you in touch with someone. I need to keep pushing this down. And if it's beyond my knowledge, then I'm going to put you in touch with someone that has that knowledge.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so, and I would say we're in agreement there.
We are. What I would say is this to all of that. Number one, at Active Life, we believe that if you're scaling because somebody's in pain, it's because you're too late and you've missed something that you could have found before the person was in pain to set them up to avoid having to experience the pain in the first place. So,
right.
So to go further on that, you described the ability to scale for things, and I'm totally like scaling is absolutely necessary. I don't think anybody is excited about getting to scale, but I understand the necessity of it. And you talked about, what's inside of your scope and what's outside of your scope. Here's where we're at on that. When scaling fails, it becomes a necessity to refer it out, is what you described. And I'm with you. I agree that that's the case. But I believe that that's only because of the education that's currently built into the scope of the coach who's coaching in the average CrossFit gym, Globo gym, F45, Orange Theory, Fit Body Bootcamp across the country. It's not that the scope of the coach can't be expanded. In the last year and a half, we've coached 500 plus coaches to be able to bridge the gap between what is necessary to happen in the physical therapist, chiropractor, orthopedist's office and what can happen in the gym. And it all starts by evaluating your members' ability to move through space joint by joint before putting any kind of mechanics, consistency, or intensity through it. It could be the scope of every coach in the gym. In every gym, if we just ask them to elevate their level of ability. And I'll give you a really simple example that I think would make this point. We used to have a guy on our staff named Drew. Drew, at one of our workshops, did an overhead pistol with 185 pounds. He followed that up with a squat clean thruster on a single leg at 205. His movement was impeccable. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful movement. He was one of those. He ended up in the grid league. If anybody listening knows what grid league is or remembers it, he was in grid league because he was able to cycle through his up and down movements so fast. You watch him move, you're like, this guy has no problem. Except he had almost no ankle range of motion. His limb lengths were such that he was able to compensate well. His hip flexibility was exceptional, so he was able to further compensate, and he was a great athlete. He walked around with excruciating knee and low back pain. But if we watch that guy work out in a class, we're never modifying anything because we don't know what's causing the problem. Then he goes to a physical therapist or a chiropractor or an orthopedist and says, hey, I get knee or back pain every time I do X movement in the gym. The doctor says, wait, what were you doing? Oh, it's a snatch. I pull a bar from the ground. I put it over my head. I catch it in the bottom of a squat and I stand it up. He's like, and how much weight were you doing that with? He's like, oh, well, 200 pounds. The doctor's like, what? Totally unnecessary. That's dangerous. You should never do it. And that's the problem. It gets to there. It doesn't ever need to get to there. Does that make sense?
I think that does, but I think my challenge to that is like I just look at my gym. I can't speak for, so what I try, I can't speak for obviously everyone. I can speak for my gyms and my members and where I'm at every day. And I mean, I've had athletes that have walked into the gym that are unbelievable athletes, unbelievably gifted, similar in scenario, but as a coach, I can tell that they don't move well. There are deficiencies, and I'm gonna, and then we're gonna have the conversation. Is there pain? Blah 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 blah. And also, what are your goals? So many different things. So I would say that if that athlete was in my gym, things would change because I'm not going to allow that. I'm not, you're going to, I remember we had this guy that walked in the gym, just a complete stud, just like he looked like an Adonis, and he was the strongest human in the world. But of course his overhead squat was not pretty and, highlighting ankle, hip and shoulder issues. Right. And I just remember I was like, well, no, you need to, and I would just put him on the PVC pipe and do different types of things. And over time we were able to make it better. And I think that's the challenge. And I think the challenge is that I don't have a skill set from a physical therapist perspective, but I can see and correct movement. And I also understand what quality movement is, but also a slow trajectory to a distant horizon. What is the rush? I don't need to rush anyone into, snatching super heavy or overhead squatting heavy or getting into handstand stuff, but we're going to slowly get them there. We're going to have these baby steps and we're going to move incrementally through, showing that, for my middle age to, older athletes that walk in that now can, they maybe get upside down for the first time in their life. And they're doing it in the class setting because they start in a plank position. And then over time we get to a pike position, and then we bring them up.
Okay.
So, I think
I agree with you there. I want to be really, really clear with you. I don't think you do anything wrong. This is not about Austin does something wrong, Sean does something right, and everyone should do it Sean's way. I agree with you. There is like the rush that people have to get their members into things is a part of the problem. And I think that if coaches took longer the way that you're describing, it would be far, far better. The question that I would pose to you or any coach like you, to your member or a member of any gym, is if there was a way to identify exactly what the problem is, instead of seeing somebody overhead squat and lean forward and assume it's the ankles, for example, if there was a way to know exactly what was limiting that movement, and because of that, there was also a way to speed the rate with which they are able to get to the movements that they want to do without needing to rush, would that then be better? And my thought is,
and I think of course, and I think the short answer is yes, and I think the longer answer is, and I do think across the board you're seeing that, certainly, from Jim's perspective, where at our gyms we have physical therapists and we have all sorts of offerings, and many gyms do in-house, and which is nice, and creating a relationship where that can happen, and we can get people, keep them moving, identify things. When I was competing, aggressively competing, I would get way more body work and things like that, and obviously that was great. It was as important as working out. And I do think that, and I think that, so the big question is, all right.
Well, before you get to the question, you said something that I wanted to make sure I address. And I think that what this comes down to, and you tell me if you disagree, is it's what the coach and the members value. And if the coach decides that they value being able to help the member fix deficiencies that are within the scope of a coach if simply educated to do so, and if the member would prefer to be with the coach than with the doctor, well, then instead of hamstringing the coach to really grow their value and their scope and their ability, then to help the member, then we can have coaches who are elevated in the professional sense, who don't feel like they're not worth charging real money for their services. Now, we see that's the biggest spot. Their mindset is, what I do isn't as good as what the chiropractor or the physical therapist or the whoever does. So anytime there's something big that comes up, I'll just refer to them. When the reality is the doctor's scope actually ends at a place that the members need their coaches to be able to pick them up. And in too many cases, we feel like the coaches don't have that acumen, and they would love it if they knew it was available to them. And when we talk about great athletes, we've had the good fortune of working with over 40 CrossFit Games athletes, 5 CrossFit Games champions, I believe at last count. They all move well, and to separate the sport from the everyday person, it's even the best movers have deficiencies that are not going to come up unless by joint. And a perfect example, I believe it was your own teammate had an elbow injury snatching in the open. And it was something that maybe could have been avoided, maybe couldn't be avoided. But that stinks when that happens. And she was able to get back and compete at the games. I was fortunate to get the phone call when it happened to be able to help with it. But I don't think that we can start to look at people in the way that they move and assume because this person moves well, nothing is wrong. Because this person's not in pain, nothing is wrong. We have to break it down joint by joint because too many people are dealing with aches and pains.
And I would agree with that. And I think that, and I think that two different scopes, right? When you're dealing with athletes, like whether you're competing at the games or not, like goals are different, right? Where,
well, but again, they differ in they don't differ in kind, right? They differ in.
But the speed at which, right? So like a good example would be is that, so as a competitor, my goal is to win, which means I'm going to do things and overwork, overuse. Because I would say that, yeah, because I understand, like, hey, like, yeah, just because you're, I mean, and I would, there's very few CrossFit Games athletes that move really well across the board, and even those that do, the ones, and there's the issues often come from whether it's compensation or the volume, all these other things. And honestly, me personally, that's the conversation that I don't really care too much about because that's not the masses, right?
No, and they understand the risks, and it's first of all, I'm the first to say I love watching it, and once you go to be a competitive athlete, you understand that the risks are different than being an everyday person. Where I'm at is I actually disagree with you that the everyday member doesn't have the same goals that the games champion does. It's just that their games is something totally different. I remember one instance in my gym when the squat snatch was the only movement that was allowed in the open. I think it was 2017. You would probably know better than me, but all of the movements had to be caught in the bottom of a squat to have them count for the snatch. And we have a member, her name is Joni. We told Joni, your hips do not allow you to catch a bar in the bottom of the snatch. They do not allow it. You do not have the range of motion. And you have a disc injury in your low back that is likely to flare up if you continuously do this, because the only way for you to get lower is to round your lumbar spine in a way that frankly isn't going to be extremely visible to everybody to see. She's like, nah, I'm going to snatch anyway. Okay, I can't tell her she's not allowed to. Her goal is to be able to feel like a superhero for the day, to be able to do what her friends did, to get the high five on the PR, to get the photo snaps while she's high-fiving the friend smiling after the PR. And Joni ended up calling out of work for a week because her low back flared up so much, because all that she wanted was to be able to get that feeling that I can do anything in the gym, because this is the kind of gym I joined to be able to do anything feeling. And I don't believe that she ever thought she was going to go to the CrossFit Games. I think her max snatch was like 75 or 85 pounds. But she wanted to feel like she could do anything. And I do believe that's how every member in every gym feels. And I think that if we wait until we're watching them move, even the best coach in the world runs the risk of allowing somebody to move over and over and over and over again in a way that their body is not built to move, but could be if the coach would just assess first and get the education necessary to change that athlete's anatomy and physiology so that they can do whatever they want. A better assessment and a better plan leads to a better result. And I don't see a way that that's not the case.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to that, that I'll just use that hypothetical athlete because they're in all the gyms, and I just think that they're at that point, if we're making it clear, they're relatively misguided, and also I think it's the coach's fault because we're in the open, but again, it's in my gym. I'm not going to let you do something unless I allow it, and if you want to, and that's just the way I'm going to roll with it. Now, I'm going to allow, I don't need perfect movement all the time, but the higher the speed, the higher the load, the less room for error we have, right? That's the way it rolls. So because I really, I think there's a difference as a competitor myself. If when I compete, I want to win. But if as I've gotten older, my life goals might have changed, and I don't do certain things as much because from for whatever reason. And I would say 99.9% of people, their goal is to, look good naked, regain, and have functionality and do whatever they want to do in life.
I don't agree with
And
that. I want to jump in there because I don't agree with that. I respect it. I think that is what they believe is the proxy to their real goal, which is they just want to feel awesome. They want to feel like they can do the things that fit people can do. And if looking good naked,
see, I think that's key. Like you just said something that fit people can do. That's the coach's job. I can make anyone feel that way by the way I deliver it. And when I coach someone, and when in my class, even if I scale them, I'm going to blow their mind with them doing something they've never done before, even though it might not look like everybody else. And because I don't.
But that's what makes you a great coach, though, Austin. I would love to be one of your members. I would love to be one of your members. I want to make emphatically clear. I think that the reason that I'm talking to you is because of the respect that I have for you, and I would love it if every coach was doing that. Do you think they are?
I agree. No, and I think that's where, and I appreciate that, and I thank you for that, and I think that I think that my goal, what I do when I do seminars, when I coach people, we have a coaching development program. Really, why I did this podcast is because my goal is to help as we've grown. Because when I first started doing CrossFit and coaching, I was coaching one or two people because that's how many people showed up to class.
Same.
And I was able to grow and get feedback from some of the best coaches in the world and progress and never stop getting feedback. Now, as we have 15,000 affiliates around the world and more people at the base level, like you said, that's a phenomenal thing. How do we keep getting our coaches better? And so I think that I think you and I differ in a few ways that I don't think it needs to be as concrete. But I do agree with you that, getting our coaches better is important. And we want to consider that professionalizing, whatever it might be, I agree. But we should be, as coaches, once we learn how to get people to keep their chest up, put their heels down, get their knees out, have them squat down, all that good stuff, then what's next? Well, unfortunately, coaches get complacent.
I think that's actually next. I think that is putting the cart before the horse. I don't believe that coaches. I believe that people are calling themselves coaches who don't have the basic acumen to do so.
So I guess pull it back to me is that I didn't have the basic acumen when I started.
But you did have the appropriate mindset. And if I'm being frank, without trying to raise conflict, I would do things differently than how you're doing them in the on-ramp portion. Right. I believe
and that's the good thing is and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think you go to 5 gyms that are unbelievably efficacious, however you want to do it. You might see it 5 different ways.
But I've changed. But is that good?
Yeah.
Okay. So look, do you mind if I ask you some questions then? Just because I want. Okay. So you might disagree with me on this, and that's okay. I love civil disagreement. I believe that the best way to help somebody get to their goals the fastest way possible, even if it's learning the absolute most basic skill, is to do it one-on-one. If they have the compliance and the mindset to come and learn it one-on-one. Do you agree with that?
I think there's a lot of qualifiers, like a lot of the ifs, but
we're looking at it in a vacuum. If somebody says to you, Austin, I want to get this snatch movement down the fastest way as humanly possible, and I have an unlimited budget and an unlimited schedule to do so. Should I work
in a vacuum? One-on-one is of course, right? Time value, all that good stuff, of course.
Right. So
for anything, right? That's for any skill set, really. Right?
Anything. For hitting a baseball, for learning Spanish. Right. Doesn't matter.
Yes.
So where I'm at on this is that if we're not willing to give our new members, the brand new people coming through the door, the opportunity for the fastest rate of change possible in the most safe and responsible environment possible, then what are we doing? What is the reason that we would have them not go through the fastest way possible besides financial, from both the gym side of growth rate and the member side of I can't afford that?
Well, so I think that there's nothing wrong with offering that, and I think a lot of gyms do. But I think there's a few things to. So I think that the one-on-one thing is, you're right. I don't think it's a bad thing, and I don't think anyone would say that one-on. But for some people, one, it doesn't work for them. They just don't want to do it. Like, there are other barriers to entry, whether it's financial, whether it's also socially, but also
Well, so we stay,
so there's a
but if we stay on
so
they don't want to, we go back to the example of me describing the member who wanted to squat snatch in the open, because the open is supposed to be for everybody, who at the end of the day, frankly, I didn't have the skills to tell her this is why you shouldn't do it and don't do it, or I'm not allowing you to do it. But now it's kind of like that gets sliced in two different ways. We can tell them not to do it at that point, but in the beginning, if they don't want to do what's best for them, it's okay. And for me, that doesn't work.
I guess, but it's heightening the barrier to entry, right? Where it's just in seeing at my gyms, right? Everyone has a different journey on how they start fitness, right? And if our goal is, because my goal isn't necessarily to make perfect movers. It's, I want to optimize your movement the best I can. I want you to move a little bit. And I know the best way to do that. Now, if one-on-one is what, if that works for you, then great, let's do it. I just don't think it's necessary to get them there. If you want to do it, if you came and you said, this is what I want, and you laid out, I want the best instruction, I want to do it quickly, I want all these things. I'm like, well, yeah, we need to do this one-on-one. But again, the low trajectory to the distant horizon, what we can just do is just simply slow it down. Because the nice thing is that certainly in a varied program where we're not going to snatch all the time. Gosh, we might not snatch for a week or 2 weeks, but we're going to learn other skills. And so within that, there is a lot it's a slow progress.
Sure.
It's a slow burn.
And I'm in no rush either. I'm in no rush to get anybody anywhere. But what you're describing to me sounds like the member coming in and telling you how they want to be coached. And I think it's imperative upon us as the coach to guide the course. And one of my favorite quotes of all time is, if I asked the people what they had wanted, they would have told me faster horses. And that's a Henry Ford quote. So the last thing I want to do is let my members come in the door and ask them how they want to learn. They don't know how they need to learn. That's my job as the coach. And I'd like to tell you about a really intimidating experience that I actually went through that was extremely valuable for myself and my staff. We were at a workshop that we were about to give at Trident CrossFit in Arlington, Virginia. And do you know Trident CrossFit, Austin?
Oh, yeah, I know Andrea and Chris are great.
Okay, so Andrea and Chris are at my level 1. I thought I knew my stuff from a fitness perspective. I knew how to coach the squat and all this stuff. Then I went to my level 1 and said, oh, man, there is another level to this, and these people have it, and I don't know it. And they blew me away with their acumen, with their professionalism. The level 1 seminar for me was like, this is the epitome of what professional in a workshop looks like. So that was my experience back in 2011 at Fort Meade. Fast forward to 2018, February, I believe it was, 2018. We are about to do a workshop at CrossFit Trident for Andrea and Chris and Jeff Tincher and a list of other CrossFit level 1 staff. I was nervous as hell walking into that room because I have so much respect for those people, their acumen, and their ability to instruct people and get people from point A to point B on that low trajectory to the distant horizon. What was profoundly impactful on my career, and I will never forget this, was they signed up 8 of their coaches to be able to come. There were 3 gyms who got together, and each of the 3 gyms put 8 coaches in. I believe it was CrossFit South Arlington, it was Weston, and it was Trident. There was a coach at Trident who was not able to come to the workshop. His name was Josh. I got a text from Andrea on Monday or Tuesday of the week. I forget what day it was. She was like, you're never going to believe what happened today. Okay, tell me. She's like, I got this email from a member, and she sent me the email. And the email said, I want to thank you so much for the way that Josh coached me in class today. Remember, Josh wasn't at our workshop. Today, because of the way that Josh taught me to deadlift differently than I've ever been taught to deadlift before, it was the first time ever in my life that I had sore hamstrings and no low back pain after deadlifting. Josh saved me the rest of my life being able to lift weights off the ground, and I have you guys to thank. Thank you. They taught Josh in their staff meeting that week what they learned at the workshop, and he executed it for a member. And all he did was put this member through a standing lumbopelvic flexion test. Simply put, stand with your legs underneath your hips, reach down as far as you comfortably can. The member couldn't touch the ground. Nobody ever knew that because the guy compensated well. He had low back pain that he didn't tell his coaches about because he didn't want to be a burden on them. Josh asked them all to go through this test before class this day. He modified this member's movement. That member felt compelled to send an email to the owner of the gym telling them how exceptional the coach was, and the coach wasn't even at the workshop. He did a 30-second test with the entire class that saved that guy's fitness career. Who doesn't want that?
I mean, I think that's great, and I don't think, and I think those things are, and again, the people that were at your workshop, obviously I know them and they're great, and that's what we're speaking the same language, is that the best coaches in the world and people should be striving to is to never stop learning. But and because of that, right, the humility of, oh, hey, I'm going to learn from this person because I don't have that skill set, or it's something that I need to increase, or whatever it might be. And I think that no one in their right mind should ever argue with that never, and hopefully no one does. And so, and I think what we're saying is, hey, you think one-on-one's the best way. I would disagree, just because, you can administer a lot of stuff within the group setting, and that's more realistic from a business perspective, a gym perspective. But if you want one-on-one, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. No different than I don't think there's anything wrong with if you have a well-equipped staff, a staff where you have more than one person within a class, you can execute a class effectively, efficiently, and keep people moving safely, effectively, and efficiently. And I've just seen that based off what I have seen in my gyms. But I do think that I think the last thing we're touching on, and you kind of touched on it there, is that, we need to give new coaches, the rite of passage of opportunity to learn and grow. And we shouldn't hamstring them from, you got to get out there and start. You got to, and like you said, it's a mindset thing, right? There's a lot in there, but you got to go out and coach people, and you're not going to be a great coach day one. But what we don't want to do is tell people that there's just one way to do something. There's multiple ways to do different things, and that's the beauty of coaching, right? It's just like, it's like squatting. You look at 10 different of the best Olympic lifters out there, they have a different setup and grip and all that stuff. But what matters is that they've taken their route to get there and figured out what works for them. And so I think we speak the same language. I guess my one challenge would be we don't want to stifle, because I hear it all the time, like, oh, like the level one's not enough for you to go coach. I'm like, man, like if I took that to heart, I wouldn't be where I am today. It shouldn't be the end of your education, and that's, I hope no one thinks that, but we have to keep pushing forward, have to keep getting better to deliver a better product by going to your course to learn about what you can deliver and what we can then deliver to our people so we can deliver a better product. You can go to all sorts of different things, and you can, and it never ends, right? And that's the beauty of it. Well, so I do think we're speaking the same language there. One way to do it. I think there are a few ways to speak the same language.
And I agree with you there, Austin, for sure. May I ask you a question? Okay. You described earlier that the member needs to take the low trajectory to the distant horizon.
Yep.
Why any opposition to the coach doing the same thing? What? And I understand the they get better over time. They need to continue learning. But why does a coach have to be able to go coach members after 2 days or even after 6 months? We don't let our doctors do that. We don't let our lawyers do that. We don't let our electricians do that. Why is it that it is perceived as stifling to ask a coach to have a professional level of acumen that allows them to effectively assess all of the human bodies that walk in front of them before deciding what to administer on them?
I just don't think it's necessary because of if you stay within your scope, so then you're gonna be okay.
But
you limit your scope on how many people you're coaching. You limit your scope on what you're coaching, and so I don't think it's necessary. I just don't think it's necessary. Where if you're coaching 1 or 2 people and you're staying within your scope of what they're doing, right? I just don't think it's necessary to say, hey, we're not going to allow you to do this until X, because again, as I look back, I look at my path, I look at paths of many others, and
right. I'm not looking to stop the coach, Austin. I think maybe I ineffectively described what I'm discussing. I'm not looking to stop the coach from growing. It's the opposite. I believe that some education on the front end and telling the coach, today, this is your scope. Once you understand the following things, your scope grows to this. And I think that one place that we might be at an impasse, that we might never be able to get on the same page, certainly not on a podcast, and that's okay, is that I believe that if every member, if we agree that every member is better off being assessed prior to being thrown into a class, then I believe that every member should be assessed. And if they're unwilling to do that, then frankly, they're just not a fit for the gym that I want to run. If somebody walks in and says, I don't want you to assess me before you tell me what to do, I want you to see me do it and then, make amendments on the fly, then that's somebody who I don't want in my gym. Their values and my values simply don't align. And maybe you and I are differing on that, and that's totally fine. What I'm suggesting is that if a coach has the ability to determine that somebody, for example, cannot reach down and scratch their own shins, maybe pulling a bar off the ground isn't the best idea. I believe the coach should be able to know that.
So I stop you there because I hear that and I see that type of stuff. I'm like, well, the dude's got to pick shit off the ground in his real life. We just got to so how are we going to modify that? I don't want him to be in pain. I'm going to ask him, right? It's the whole setting. I still think it's a systematic failure of the gym, because if someone's in pain and they're not talking about it, that's a systematic problem.
I agree with you. And the person is going to have to pick things up off the ground. But the way that somebody picks something up off the ground is very different than a hinge. If they don't have the range of motion in the hinge, they can drop to a knee. They can squat down.
There's exactly, but that's what I'm talking about. So if I'm watching this athlete, because we have athletes here that all sorts of stuff, and and I don't even think that I'm that. I don't think I'm smart. I just think that I assess. I watch someone, I'm like, that's not what it should look like. I'm going to talk to you. All right. If a barbell's not the thing, then let's straddle a kettlebell, lower the hips, pull the chest up. So then from there, we can put that back in the right position, or whatever it might be. I can assess in the class. And again, you're right. And it's just, as we go through this, I don't think there's anything wrong with one-on-one assessment. If that's what you do in a gym, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I just think you can be similarly effective in a group setting, and by just, it just might take a little bit longer to assess, but you might actually get some results a little. I think at the end it's a wash.
Well, I think it's.
Frankly, I think because when it's all said and done, look at this, right? Take a drive. When you get your license, you get assessed one-on-one, right?
Yes.
It's not a group setting,
right?
You get assessed one-on-one. And I would say that assessment is about, I wouldn't say that it's effective, because look at the drivers out there, right?
But can you imagine if we just let them learn in a group? In my driver's ed class.
I would disagree with that, because I would almost say, well, you're going to find out the weaker links maybe a little faster and help them or stop them. But with one-on-one, you might be just as blind as you would be in a group.
Austin, in my driver's ed class, one of the guys, the instructor said, there were 4 people in the car. The instructor said, make a left turn up here. And the guy made a left turn and got the car stuck on the island in the middle of the road. Now, I don't think there's any way that anybody could agree.
But I'm just saying, one-on-one doesn't necessarily mean it's it's not the only way, because you look at people that go out and get their license, they're not great drivers. Right.
Austin, what I'm agreeing with you on is that one-on-one does not ensure absolute success at the end of the day. Where we disagree, potentially, although earlier I thought you said that you agreed with me, in a vacuum, one-on-one is the best way to the best outcome, the fastest possible, responsible way.
I think unfortunately that vacuum's not realistic, because if the person teaching you how to drive does care, they are very good, they teach you whatever it might be, then of course that's the best way to do it. But the vacuum is not the real world. We live in the real world. Thus, we need to adapt to find different ways to achieve the best desirable outcome.
Right. But what you're describing in the group is the driver's ed coach kind of watching 10 cars with one driver at the same time in each from a distance and trying to get 10 people to get onto the highway at the same time while making sure that none of them get hurt. And they're each in their own car. And, what I ask you, I guess, is what are the barriers? I mean, what are you said it's not realistic for people to do it all one-on-one. What are the barriers to people doing it one-on-one? I would love to go through them with you, because A, it's possible I haven't considered some of them, and that would change the way that we do some things, and that would be valuable. Or B, it's possible that we have different perspectives on the same ones.
So I think, one, I've done the one-on-one thing. I've done the small group. I've done the big group on-ramp. So I've done it all, because in just changing, right? I think where your business is from a growth perspective matters a lot, right? I have a 10-year affiliate here, so I don't have hundreds of people coming in the gym, right? Like I don't have, so if I'm doing day one, so when I opened up, one of our One Nation locations, we did, essentially it was groups, and they just took class because I had 20 new people. And I didn't, I couldn't put 20 people through one-on-ones because I couldn't schedule it. I couldn't get, it was impossible to do it because everyone wants to work out at the same time at 6:30 in the morning. Well, okay. So what we did is just what a lot of gyms do is, all right, we're just going to essentially do on-ramp for the first month because we're a brand new gym. That's,
I did the same thing.
Well, yeah. And most gyms did that. Right. And because that's the easy scenario.
Well,
then you get
can we just stay on that one for a moment? Because I think that to do that, if we look at it in a price vacuum, which it's not, then we know one-on-one is better, we're then sacrificing the members' opportunity to advance for the good of our business. And I think,
but it's also for them, but I just don't think, it's the best, but
But no, but that's fine. I mean, I understand the needs of a business to advance. And I also understand that there are some people who maybe wouldn't do the one-on-one, who will get outstanding results long-term if they just stick it out in the group. I'm only talking about the one situation up front. If somebody comes in, we have a better opportunity to help them one-on-one than we do in a group, is my position. And I'm looking.
Yeah, but so take a look at the community side of it, where so what we do now is we put them in the class because I actually think that there's more upside to get them around people, to get them in the community, to get them feeling that, to get them there's more of a psychological and emotional benefit than the one-on-one stuff, because we're not a one-on-one gym. I don't train people one-on-one. We're a group gym. So if you want one-on-one, that's just a whole different thing. That's not what we really do. So that's one of the main reasons why we switched to people jumping into class, and we have an instructor kind of stay with them the whole class. So it's kind of one-on-one where we give them a lot of extra love, but
that's the problem that I've always had with the way that we speak about what we do as CrossFitters and CrossFit gym owners. It's like one-on-one, but it's different. And if I gave my, infant maple syrup, it's similar to honey, but honey will kill her. And what I want to understand from your perspective is, why don't you offer one-on-one? I mean, you said we're a group, Jim, and I respect that. Why don't you
Because
offer one-on-one?
I believe that there's more value to getting them in a class around people, because that's what the product we deliver is, and that's what we believe in as the most efficacious. So we've seen, and it's great because that's what we do. We actually see a bigger drop off if we do small groups to one-on-one without a proper like going into a class, because they're not used to what our classes are, the energy, the all of that stuff. So I think there's more value of getting them in with the people right away, because that's what they're going to be doing, because that's what we offer.
Okay. So then,
and
so again, we're talking about the value of the member as a business asset for us, and I understand that. But are you familiar with any gyms?
It's less of a business asset, because I want consistency. Because I actually care. Like, I don't want people to leave. If I only cared about a business, I know how to. Fitness industry is not hard to make a sticky business, right? The CrossFit business is a very simple business model, right? That's not super sexy, right? It's, you have members.
But see, that's where we would disagree, and I think that's why coaches are finding so much success when they learn a different way to do it. And within CrossFit,
I get it. Like, I understand the business, and I think that when you fall into the one-on-one training world within the CrossFit world, then I actually think that if you're charging for that, then I actually think that you're doing a disservice to the athlete, saying you need to do this. Every gym that I see that does the whole like personal training model to supplement their revenue and income, I don't necessarily agree with that.
So I'm with you. I would not agree to selling to people for the simple purpose of increasing revenue and income. I would, right. If somebody who we were working with was doing that, we would throw them out of any one of our programs. Our first rule of selling anything to anybody is we only sell to people who need or want what we have. That's it. If they don't need it or they don't want it, we absolutely in no circumstances sell it to them. In fact, we follow that mantra ourselves, and 35% of people who come to us for one-on-one, we send out to a doctor or a coach locally to them. And about 60%, unfortunately, of the gym owners who come to us and want to take our gym owner course, we turn away because they're not equipped to do it the way that we need them to do it. So I
guess my challenge to you is like, and I guess this is like, I don't know, I have 3 gyms. I run a fitness facility here at Reebok, like, and they're pretty successful. And I've done it different ways. You know, in the past, I have a lot of friends that run gyms that are super successful. I think that you'd be hard pressed to come to this gym. And I mean, our people move well. And of course, we obviously can do better. And that, the goal is always to improve. But obviously I'm just not a fan of there's not one way to do it.
I'm with you.
And there's not one best way.
I'm with you, but let's take, so 2 questions for you. The first one is, are you familiar with any gyms who are currently doing one-on-one and group and are successful for both themselves and their members long-term?
Most of the gyms that I know that are really successful, I mean, I don't know if my scope is massive. No, I mean, like, I think about my buddy Paul up in Canada. Like, he's got one of the most successful gyms in all of Canada, and he does a similar. They just all jump into class and take it.
So I'm with you. That is one way to be successful. What I'm asking you is if you know of gyms who are successful doing it the other way, where they include one-on-one, where the members are also happy, and the staff is well paid, class and one-on-one. And anything I would speak. I don't know. I can't speak to that well. No problem. I would be happy to introduce you to them just so you can see how the other side is living, because you seem like the kind of guy to me who is interested in a bunch of different perspectives. And I have about 40 gyms that I would be happy to connect you with who we do work with, and other gyms who we don't work with who are doing the same. My next question for you is, when you look at your membership, here's an example of how we talk to coaches about doing one-on-one, just so you can understand where it comes from and what drives it and the intent behind it. When you look at your membership, the proverbial you, not Austin Malleolo. When you look at your membership, is there anybody in the gym who joined for a given goal 6 months or a year ago who either A, hasn't hit it, or B, isn't even moving close to it, or C, has gotten worse? Most people say, yes, I can think of that one person who joined to lose some weight a year ago who still hasn't lost some weight. Yes, I met that one person who wanted to get a pull-up 2 years ago who still doesn't have a pull-up. And some of that is their coaching acumen, and some of that is the ability of the members to learn in that environment, and some of it is the accountability that that member needs. So all that we ask is that the coach walk over to that person and ask them, hey, is it bothering you that this is still a problem? And if they say yes, the next question that we tell them to ask is, how long has it been bothering you? And if they tell them it's been bothering them for an extended period of time, we advise the coach to apologize for missing it and not being able to fix it. And then we ask the coach to ask them what they've done to make sure that they've done the right things. And if they have, we ask the coach to ask them why those things haven't worked. And then we ask the coach to ask the member, is it a priority for you to fix this, or is it a whenever it happens kind of thing? And then the last thing that we teach the coaches to ask the member is, if I made time, would you want to get with me one-on-one to see if we can fix this together? In every single aspect of that questioning, we are putting the ball in the member's court to ask them if they would like more than just group, knowing that they're going to need to pay for it. And what I would say, just the last thing I would say on this, and then I'd be happy to have you respond, is if you polled coaches and said, hey, are you doing your best when you coach class? And you polled gym owners and said, are you doing your best when you coach class? To a man, they're all going to say yes, if they belong in the gym coaching. If they say no, then they need to get out. If they say yes, and these members still exist in their gym, then there's one of two realities. They are not a good enough coach, or the group environment isn't working for that member. And I believe that in both cases, the coach should have an opportunity to help that member.
Yeah, I mean, all of that stuff happens at my gyms. So I agree with you. It's like, you talk to people, you should know their goals. You should be tracking them. This is all stuff that, that is, we've talked about and we've preached at the level 1. So I'm in agreement with you there.
But the where we differ is Susie hasn't lost 30 pounds in 2 years. That's what she joined for. The way that, like, in my mind, it is unethical as a fitness business owner to have somebody come to you and say, my goal is to lose 30 pounds. To do your best and put them in a group, have them fail to hit that goal, and continue to take their money month after month after month because it's not a big enough priority to them, and to put the blame on them. We are the fitness professionals. It's incumbent upon us to guide our members where they ask us to help them go.
Again, I agree with you, and I think but that's the thing. It's like, you basically, what you said to me is you should talk to your athletes and if they're not where they need to be, then that's a problem, right?
Yes, and then we need a plan. So what's the plan?
But the plan is easy. It's like, just, we got to talk to them. I don't think it has to be so crazy. It's like, where we differ is that I just look at it simply as like, you got to care about your people and you got to track their results. If they're not getting their results, we need to tweak or change whatever we're doing or whatever they're doing together to get those results.
So Austin, I'm with you on that. Exactly. But you are the coach who I want. Austin Malleolo is the coach that I want in every CrossFit gym. And you just told me you care about your members. You talk to your members. You do your best by your members. Your coaches do their best by your members. And this still happens. And it's not,
and that's where you can do it one-on-one. You can do it in a group. What it comes down to is that we need to help our coaches do it. So I guess the thing is, I think that you can achieve the same thing in a group setting, in a one-on-one setting. I don't think it needs to be Hammurabi's code, but I do think at the base level, inexperienced or novice coaches are still doing good work. They just can't rest on what they're doing as effective. They need to keep getting better. And
I agree
so
with that. I agree with that. They do need to keep on getting better. But I want to use your gym and you as an example here because I respect you. And because everything I've ever seen at Reebok One on Instagram, Facebook, frankly, I haven't been there, but I've heard amazing things. And you're describing still having this problem. And I believe that if you just had time with people one-on-one, you would change their lives. And I don't understand why you're so resistant to doing it.
I'm not necessarily resistant to it, but I just from it doesn't. I will not do one-on-one from a time perspective. I don't have the time to be able to do that. So my skill set is better diverse over a class time because if I can, because of all the other things that my responsibilities, and so and our membership, and that's what we teach with our coaches, and I'm not 100. I get the whole one-on-one thing, and I did the one-on-one thing. We've done the one-on-one thing. It's also not as fun for the members. They really enjoy being around other people. Some of them. Some people will never be in a group. Like, I mean, and that's another thing. Like, I know people very close to my heart that will never work out in a group. So if you don't offer that at your gym, then unfortunately you will not be able to help them. And that's something you need to think about too, if that's what you want to do or not do.
So now, Austin, we're back to only being able to do it one way. And that there are multiple.
If that's what you want, but that's like I offer CrossFit at my gym. I don't offer other things.
No, I follow you. But CrossFit started one-on-one. And I think that what you're describing there is a projection of other people's values and other people's fulfillment.
No, because I like what you said. CrossFit did start one-on-one. So like, but then from there it started to one-on-two, one-on-three, one-on-four, one-on-five. So
for business purposes. And I'm in agreement with you, by the way. I would way rather work out in a group class than one-on-one. But I have a coach on my staff at Active Life whose name is Larry, and he trains people right here at our HQ. And I watch the way his members come in and interact with him. And I would challenge anybody who says that those people would rather be in a group. I would challenge that those people are not having fun. And I would challenge that Larry is not having fun. And what I would pose to you is that while you might be a coach who prefers group class and would be energy drained by working one-on-one, by the way, me too, there might be coaches who are either A, on your staff, or B, in your area who would love to come to your gym to provide a service that some of your members would love to have.
And so I would agree, and I would 100% agree with that.
So then why not allow for it?
It's not that I don't allow for it. It's just that we don't currently do it.
Okay.
If I had a coach that was like, if I had a coach that said I only want to do one-on-ones, like, great, go ahead.
I'm not kidding when I tell you this right here live on your podcast. I have a coach who owned a gym, who was in the Boston area, who came to our workshop in Boston. And after hearing what we told him it took to be an exceptional gym owner, from my experience as an average gym owner, he decided to sell his gym and go all in on coaching, because really what he wanted was to coach people, not to own a gym and run the business. And he wants to work with people one-on-one. He's in Boston. I will connect you to him today. If you're really
do it.
Okay. Done.
Do it. Done.
And by the way, if you don't think he's worth hiring, absolutely do not hire him. But I just want you to be able to hear that there are coaches out there who believe that they would enjoy this as much, if not more than group. And there are members in your gym who I believe would be all about doing it.
And I agree with that.
Okay. Yeah. And I mean, we're not talking about, by the way, one-on-one instead of group. We're talking about one-on-one for group. We're talking about one-on-one so that they can squeeze the most juice out of that group.
I agree. I think that's a good spot to end it. That's 75 minutes. If people stick around for this whole thing, God bless them.
Well, look, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you allowing me to have civil disagreement with you about something that we both want to see the best outcome from, because I think all that you and I want is the same thing.
Yeah,
People
I
to
would agree.
live more empowered and fulfilled lives, and the people who facilitate that to be rewarded for it.
Yeah, I agree.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. That was fun.
Thank you. Thank you very much, brother.
My pleasure. I'm down to talk with you anytime, and I will connect you to Dan in 5 minutes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, please do. That's great.
All right. My pleasure.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Bye.
Bye.